Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doha podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Afshin Jaberi, who's a pianist, and we're going to talk to him about his career in music. So, Mr. Afshin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, my name is Afshin Jaberi. I've been living in Qatar all my life, 45 years. I was brought up here and studied in the Arabic schools, governmental schools in Qatar. And after I finished my studies, I decided to go and pursue my career in music. So I went to Hungary to continue my music studies. But of course, I had my challenges, especially that in those years that I was living in Qatar, there were no formal musical education in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do around 2.5 years of preparations before I was able to enter the university. Because as you know, in Europe, especially in Hungary, the music education is taken very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And all the students who are entering the university, they've been studying since childhood. And they were prepared, as any other university, to continue their studies in music. So the only music education background which I had was that which I taught myself. So many times I had to practice and trying to develop in this field without any teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But they noticed the talent in me, and they have kind of opportunities that I can develop in this field. So that's why after 2.5 years of preparation, I was accepted in the university, which is called Franz Liszt Academy of Music, which is very famous in the world. The name Franz Liszt is a very famous name of a Hungarian composer.
Mm-hmm.
And a very famous pianist in the history of music, from the 19th century. So after 4 years of studying in the university, I was graduated with my bachelor's degree. And then after that, I decided to do my postgraduate studies in Kazakhstan, which was also known for its music education. Of course, as you know, they were part of the Soviet Union,
Mm-hmm.
and the Soviet Union has a very rich history in music and still does. And we can see many famous performers, composers who were from Soviet Union or from Russia. So all this region was influenced by that. So that's why in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, in the music academy, which I continued my studies, most of the teachers were graduated from the Moscow University, and they were really very high-level teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So I did kind of a master's degree, but it is higher than master's degree. It was like a PhD in arts.
Mm-hmm.
But since it was 2 years of studies, it was kind of a master's degree. Then I worked on my thesis, which was to introduce music education as an extracurricular activity in the public schools, because I thought that that's where we need to start if you want to have music culture in this region, or specifically in Qatar. We need to start from the grassroots.
Yeah.
So yes, we can have academies, we can have institutes, but if it's not taught in the public schools, you will many people, many children, many students will kind of be deprived from music education. So I started to work out a program which is more in line with the culture of this country, to use more of the Oriental music and the local culture to bring the students closer to music. Of course, there are some private schools in Qatar whom they have their music curriculum, but again, it's very much as a Western music curriculum. So I know that also from the experiments that I've been doing in some of the schools in Qatar during while I was working on my thesis, and also even now that my children are going to private schools, and I know the music teachers and I see what they are teaching. So it's very much it's influenced by Western classical music or Western music curriculums, that which is good. I mean, a very rich curriculum, but I felt that maybe to bring along culture from this region, well, bring them closer to music. Especially that I think we all know how music plays a big role in bringing up generations. I mean, it's been said from all times that if you want to know the civilization of a country, you have to listen to its music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how music represents a nation or a region. So that's why I felt that it was important to work on this, and I think, if I'm not wrong, it was among the first works about in this field of music education. And so this was a brief history of how I went through all this process of studying studying music.
All right, so. That's great. But I wanted to go back a little bit to, you said that you have been living in Qatar for 45 years now.
Yes.
How is that like? How did Qatar look when you were a child? And how has it changed? I mean, we know it's changed so much,
yes,
but yeah.
I mean, excuse me. I used to live in Wakra until I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And that time, even there was no road between Doha and Wakra. I mean, it was a sand road, I remember.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, part of it at least. So, yes, I have seen a lot of buildings being built in front of my very eyes. I remember when the Corniche, which is the landmark of Qatar, I think, and it was being prepared for the GCC summit. I think it was the second GCC summit, if I'm not wrong. And I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and I was studying in Doha, and we were taken as children to be prepared and to be to greet the sheikhs and the kings who are coming for the summit, and how Sheraton was built, and how in that area was only Sheraton. You know, it was all desert. Even this very same building that we are having this interview in, it was all desert. So yes, there are lots of changes that I have witnessed in Qatar, especially in education, I could say. I mean, plus, I mean, the whole infrastructure and buildings and how Qatar is being a modern city, as we can see it, even it's continuing its progress. I think I personally, which is of course naturally is my field, education, I have seen this progress, this big change between the schools that we were studying at and the opportunities that is available now in Qatar, and especially in music. Now we can see that there are different institutions. They have recently also opened the Qatar Music Academy, which I had the pleasure of visiting. I was invited once to go and visit it by one of the principals there, and I have seen the opportunities that is provided for the students to progress in music. Something that I missed a lot. I mean, and it was kind of a challenge for me, as I mentioned, when I went to Hungary, because I had only my own education that I have provided for myself, and so. But now you can see a very professional education, and in any field that you name it. I mean, you can find professional education in Qatar.
Yeah. Wow. So, in terms of like, how did you develop this love for music when you were younger? Because as you said, there wasn't any sort of professional education for it. So how did you discover that, this is what I want to do or study for the rest of my life?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, as we were traveling in summer outside for vacation, in one of the trips, I listened to classical music. I think I saw it on TV, one of the performances of one of the orchestras. And then we bought some tapes, classical music tapes. On those days, still we had tapes. We didn't have CDs, and so you can see how many generations back you have to go to. Then I think it was the music of Beethoven. The tapes was one of his piano concertos, and some of his symphonies, and some other composers, like I think it was Schubert. So somehow I started listening to their music, and kind of attracted me. Although even my teachers were surprised in Hungary that a boy from a country that there were no music life in that sense. It was not known for its music. Have developed this interest, even for them, was kind of unique, and I think that's what also encouraged them to work with me, so I'll be ready to enter the university. So I don't know, I think somehow the music that was composed by these great composers touched my heart, and I started developing this interest. And of course, I had a small keyboard, and I tried to imitate, somehow these great composers by composing my own music sometimes. So it's very small, short melodies, and trying to develop my techniques that I was listening also from the tape, and I was trying to imitate those techniques and trying to work on my own technique as well. So that's basically how it started. And then just before I traveled to 1 year or 2 years before I traveled to Hungary, I had a piano, full-size piano, electrical piano. And I started loving this instrument even more, the sound of the piano.
Yeah.
And I knew it would be a challenge. Of course, in those days, what was common to become a doctor, to become an engineer, these were the fields that, so...
Especially in this region. It's
still very unique, yes. But I really had the challenge of to convince people around me.
Yeah.
And my parents as well. Of course, they had a lot of I could say they were trying to convince me not to go into this field, but I tried my best to make them see that why it's important, and the role it plays in humanity, and the contributions I can make through music. And so these were some of the challenges. But especially when I was in high school, I developed quite an interesting way of playing on piano. And I used to go to Doha High School, which was located near the Marriott. If you know
Okay.
where is the Marriott hotel, which is near the Corniche, the other Marriott,
Yeah, the
because we
Doha
have
Marriott.
to.
Yeah.
In those days, it was called the Gulf Hotel.
Okay.
And there was a piano there, so sometimes during breaks I was able to go there, and some of my friends, also the Qatari friends, would come with me, and they were enjoying me playing piano for them. And of course, when I was going to school, I was wearing the traditional thobe and ghitra and agal. So even the foreigners, sometimes the guests who were coming, they were kind of also, it was a nice scenery for them. And a man with the Qatari dress and the traditional dress, and he's sitting behind the piano and he's playing Beethoven, or he's playing classical music and he's performing on the piano. So I could say these were actually, it was really interesting. It was how even some of the students, they were asking me to record some of this classical music for them. And I think this was like the first steps how I started to contribute, in enriching at least the people around me about understanding of classical music, and bring them closer to the importance importance of music. So, and it was really an interesting moment for me. I really kind of learned a lot from it. Even it helped me when I was doing my research regarding the subject, that how I could provide music that people around me can interact, or the students can interact with. And so this was one of the experiences.
Wow, that's incredible. So do you want to tell?
That was in 1990.
Yeah.
So long time back.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Sorry.
So do you want to tell me a little bit about the public health program the public education program that you've started with regards to music, and like how are you implementing it in schools, and how can the general community like know about this or like participate in it in a way?
Well, I could say, unfortunately, after I came back, I didn't kind of implement it in schools, but because I started also continuing my father's business, which is a business which he established also a long time back in 1979. So this year is 40 years since he established this business, and which is an interior design and furniture business and lightings. So, but sometimes I was asked about it, and the research that I have done in the VCU, once they asked me about this research, they were doing another research about arts in Qatar, and they kind of asked a part of this thesis to be provided for them as analysis that I've been doing while I was writing my thesis. But I think still I have not seen a curriculum that was worked out for the public schools. I'm not talking about the private schools, but the public schools. So I feel that still there is a big chance, for developing a program which is closer to the students. And I'm hoping that it will one day work out for me to contribute in this way. Yeah. So.
Wow. Okay. So for someone who's like from your background, who wants to study music or who wants to pursue this in their career, like, do you have any tips or any advice? What can they do?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important for the parents to realize the importance of music in the life of their children and in education of children. I know it's very challenging because maybe I could say unfortunate that students or the children they see that people are doing well without it.
Yeah.
But for example, but when it comes to other subjects like math or literature, science, they kind of don't question it whether should we learn or not.
Yeah.
You see, and I've been approached by many parents that they will ask me, how do you encourage your children to pursue to learn music? Because my daughters, all of them, they play piano, violin, and they love music. And I always tell them it starts from the parents. Okay, what language they use to introduce music to children. And this, I think, the challenge that the parents who are not very well informed about music face, that the moment the child kind of resists after a few lessons to continue, they will give up. He says, okay, we don't want to put pressure on you.
Yeah.
But the question that I put in front of them, if the child will put pressure on you, I don't want to learn math. Is that an option?
No.
No. I mean, you would start, trying to find ways to make him or make your child be interested in learning math through different ways, different methods.
Yeah.
And this is very much the same with music. I know children, they love music. I mean, you always see them interact with music, whether it's in a concert or a music that you put in your car or in your house. They kind of interact with it, okay? But because sometimes we also don't know how to make them be encouraged to continue learning music as part of their education. And so many times I tell my children that this is part of your upbringing. It's not about determining your future, whether you want to be a musician or not. I mean, everyone will find their ways, in life about whom they want to be. But music is as any other subject that you learn, but you need to learn it well.
Yeah.
And you need to let it help you in life, as languages, as math and science and history. Of course, not everyone will be a mathematician, but they need to know about it, and it's part of how it will help them. It will help them in any subject that they will choose to continue in life. So, I think if you will start using this kind of language with the children or with the students, it kind of makes them understand why they need to learn music. It was, excuse me, it was proven that music, when we play an instrument and we learn an instrument, it's like a full body workout for the brain. It's a very big thing. I mean, not reading, not drawing. Of course, I'm not underestimating any of them.
Yeah.
Okay, but to learn how to play an instrument, it kind of gives our brain the opportunity to open up for other things, for learning other things. So,
that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, these I think the moments that we have to look at if we want to encourage our children to study music. But I think the opportunities now, which is opening up for the students in Qatar, it is kind of being more encouraging for more and more children to go and learn music. Okay, so my other advice is that it's good that for the parents, they will let the children discover these opportunities. I'm sure the joy of their children performing live, and the encouragement they receive from the audience, it's going to be unforgettable moment for the child, for the child, which makes him wants to continue this, and also the attention that they get from being musician. I think these are the moments that they can invest in.
Yeah.
And it's very important, especially for the mother, even during pregnancy, to listen to classical music or to music in general. But of course, classical music was again proven that has a very positive influence on the child, even when the child is in the womb of the mother. Music of Bach and Mozart was scientifically proven that how it's affecting the child. So I think the choice of music also plays a big role in how we let our children be encouraged, to continue music.
It's incredible.
So I think it's a very deep subject. I think it needs a very a long discussion, but I think it's always, as any other thing, starts at home.
Yeah.
Whenever they ask my advice, and as I mentioned, the choice of music and the language we use, and also not to give up immediately when they kind of face the challenge of practicing to learn an instrument. And also knowing that what effect does learning an instrument has on our brain and on our mind.
Definitely.
And of course on our soul. As was always said, that music is the food for soul. Or music is a ladder for soul to progress. And again, this is, as I mentioned, is a long subject. Maybe, hopefully, one day we can discuss more about it.
Definitely. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. So how can our listeners listen to your music that you produce?
Well, first of all, they can just Google my name, Afshin Jaberi. The company which I'm working with is a very big company. It's called Naxos, which is today has the largest classical music library. And they launched a new sub-label. It's called Grand Piano Overtone, which they promote composers who are playing their own compositions, and especially piano music. So in 2015, I had my first release with them. And there are very interesting pieces there, which talks about the concept of unity, especially unity in diversity. I would those that they will go and search for this my CD. I would recommend them listen to the third sonata. Sonata is a form of a composition which has 3 movements. And it's called the Bedouin, and the subject is about how many cultures in the world, but I took the example of the Bedouins, as many of the various cultures and tribes in the world, that they feel isolated in this globalization that is happening in the world. So still they cannot find their place where they belong, and but I look at it in a different way in that music, that although sometimes we are different, but that doesn't mean we cannot be united. So this concept of unity in diversity, it's kind of highlighted in that composition. Like the example of our body, the body has different organs, the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the arms, they are different, but they are united under one soul, so, or another example is a garden, that you have the different flowers, different colors, different plants which makes that garden beautiful. You know, so this concept of unity and diversity, which I think we need to focus on.
It's beautiful.
You know, so hopefully with the same company, Naxos, and under the same label, Grand Piano Overtone, I will have the second release in October. Already everything is set. We are
amazing.
working
Yeah.
on the liner notes and the art works and of the cover and so on. So hopefully in October I will have my second release with them.
That's amazing.
Yes, and hopefully again the listeners would go and Google it.
Yes.
And it's provided on iTunes, it's provided on Amazon and all the platforms and Spotify. So it's accessible for everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, so
Well, thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you for coming on our show. I hope you enjoyed the experience.
It was a pleasure.
And
Pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting.
it's our pleasure. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great week and see you next week. Take care.